All right, Tyson, we're finally back. It's been a few weeks, but we're ready to do some UFL content after we finally got the merger of the USFL and XFL together. And today we got a special guest star with us, Scottradamus. If you recall last year, he was on with us a lot, helping us really just learn the lay of the land with the XFL and transition into kind of the different scoring structure and just really learn a lot about the league. So I'm excited, man. Finally get some football to gamble on.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for having me. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you guys having me back. I'm ready for some what I consider the best spring football season we've had to date. So I'm pretty excited.
It's going to be good. Let's get into it. Guys, welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez and special guest Scottradamus. Scott, for the new people that are tuning in, trying to build some lineups this weekend, there's $50K up top and a big $15 contest. Not the best contest in the world surrounding it, but I'm not going to be too upset about $50K. We saw $100K last year, but there was a ton of overlay. Now maybe DraftKings, maybe they're feeling a little snake bitten and they lowered it a little bit. But I can't complain about that. Anyways, for those who are tuning in because they want to build some lineups, what do we need to know about this new UFL league? We got XFL, XFL, USFL merging. There's 8 teams. Four from the XFL, 4 from the USFL, even though we've got, the Gamble Necks is maybe what we're going to call them now, over there in Houston. So update the folks on what we can expect from this league, and what are some things to think about as we're combing through these players and these teams.
Yeah, so I mean, it's basically like you said, the 4 USFL and the 4 XFL, and basically you've kind of got this divide between the USFL fans, really thinking that their teams are better, the XFL fans thinking their teams are better. But the honest truth is it's a nice pool of the cream of the crop. They've dwindled it down. There were some really, really good players that got cut this last week. So I think it's the best of the best. I think the competition is going to be really, really strong this year. I think on any given week, any team can win. And I think for those who want to bet, the season right now, I think everybody is live to win this thing all outright. So I'm feeling pretty good, excited for some spring football. And I think, just like we said all last year, the true edge is effort. It's paying attention. It's really, tracking news, paying attention to rosters. Depth charts are going to come out in the next couple days. A couple starters still need to be named. So we're early, but we're ready.
Yeah, and speaking of being early, make sure you guys jump in the Discord. We're probably going to be in there massively chatting it up, trying to figure out, get some intel right up until lock on Saturday. So make sure you guys jump in the Discord. It's free. Ellie, thoughts on this season, man? Like, this should be a fun one. Like, you and I were more into XFL. Like, I was more of an XFL fan. I have gotten myself up to date as much as I possibly could with USFL stuff as we're leading up to this show. But I'm curious to see, the best of the best in the USFL and the best of the best in the XFL, like, which league is going to be better? I'm kind of interested to see that. And we're going to see that in the first game, the 2 champions going head to head from last year. So thoughts on the season, Ellie?
Well, I think we talked about this a little bit before the show started, but one of the most interesting things that I'm really prepared for is last year when we started watching the XFL, some of the play in the trenches was a little bit uglier than I was expecting it to be. It's a tough position to play offensive line, obviously defensive line, but that's one I'm going to be paying pretty close to attention to over the next week. It's just see if we get an improved play, just because, like you guys are saying, the consolidated leagues. But with that said, I think there's something from DFS, for those who are watching for the first time, maybe haven't played USFL or XFL or this year UFL, right? It is a little bit different when you're building for DraftKings, right? You don't have the full roster that you do for NFL. So in this particular, you're looking at 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 2 wide receiver tight ends, right? Just like Tyson has up here. two flex and a defensive special teams. I fucking hate DST, but at least we have no kickers, right?
True.
So it's just something that we're going to have to keep in mind when we're building. There's just different things and different variables that we're going to have to worry about that we didn't with NFL.
So Scott, last year, I know you really got deep, specifically with XFL, as far as like breaking down every week, figuring out like the optimal lineups, figuring out the salary. You know, going into week one last year for XFL specifically, there was a lot up in the air because it was basically a brand new league. You know, it was XFL 2.0. We didn't really know a whole lot, and they sure as hell didn't tell us a whole lot coming into it. I feel like at least this year, we at least know, like, there are teams that have crossed over the merger and are still pretty intact, and I feel like we know a lot of these teams and who's going to be good, who's not going to be maybe as good, but there's still a lot of question marks up in the air. So what are your thoughts on kind of roster construction here, stacks, like leaving salary on the table? It feels like week one, we're going to see some $3,500, 2% owned guy score 2 touchdowns. And we saw it last year. We saw our 40-something% owned Martavis Bryant not even like getting a goose egg, I think. Like, there's going to be a lot of that going on. Maybe not as much last year that we saw with the XFL, but there's still going to be some squirrely shit going down.
Definitely. Side note, Martavis Bryant got a goose egg for that whole season. He burned me so bad. But,
I know.
But aside from that, yeah. I mean, look, there is a lot more press now when these two leagues have been combined. USFL, they had a lot of good reporters out there, local reporters. I mean, their Twitter's full of it right now. So we're getting more information. Last year, the XFL, it was scary week one. No one knew anything. A couple touts maybe made some picks based on, some stats from college, but that's about it. This year, I feel more people, we're going to be better prepared just because of the news that's out there. The PR, both leagues' PRs coming together, the money that's behind this, they really want to make this work. Spring football has been trying to work for years, and, you love it or hate it, it hasn't quite got there. And I think this could be the chance. They're already talking about expansion of 16 teams within the next year or two. So I think they're going to really try hard to kind of mimic NFL. AJ McCarron said, just the other day, he said basically he would love to see this really turn into a true farm league system. And I think if the NFL gets involved and some of that money trickles down, I think we'll have even more information out there prior to kickoff, a week before rosters, depth charts. So I think we're in a better spot than we were last year with XFL. But, overall, when it comes to DFS and building these lineups, the one key that we would just stress really hard is that, they don't know the proper salaries. I mean, they just don't. The salaries are not correct right now. So just eliminate the salaries. Just delete the salaries from your mind and just look at the players and who you think is going to get the most targets, most receptions, the most carries. I mean, there's some running backs week one that are kind of banged up. The number one running back right now is kind of banged up. So, I think that we saw really chalky builds last year going towards those NFL names. And I think the best advice I can give people is stray away from that week one. Don't look at salary. Don't look at those name brand recognition names, and really do some research and try to find the best plays.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in that big contest. If you're trying to solo that or hit first, it feels like we're going to see a wacky build with a lot of money left on the table potentially there. All right, so in the Discord, a group of 5 of us put together sort of rankings when it comes to positional by players, some team rankings. We're going to go briefly through that right now. This is going to be probably an hour plus show, maybe hour 10. We're going to try to keep it under an hour, but we'll see. We're going to briefly go through the rankings here. This is sort of season long kind of best kind of players, and we're kind of guessing. Like, it's been nice to see your guys' rankings because I feel like they kind of match up a little bit, and there's some differences with certain players. But let's look at quarterbacks. All right, so let me jump into this real quick here. So quarterbacks here, week one. There's 5 of us. It looks like, and by the way, guys, we're going to have this information in the Discord. So if you want to actually look at this quicker and look deeper into it, feel free to jump into that Discord. It looks like most of us have McCarron number 1. Brother Phil in the Discord has Case Cookus, but basically McCarron, Case Cookus 1 and 2. Teamu is right up there. You know, you're looking at the offensive player of the year last year for DC in the XFL. And there's some other question marks here. You know, we all know about Luis Perez. He got traded from Vegas. And as soon as he got traded, that Arlington team turned around. They were pretty much a below average team. As soon as he stepped in, you know, they won the championship with him last year. So, you know, is he going to come back and play as well? I personally think Arlington is going to play a little bit worse than they did last year. I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs. You know, I think San Antonio is a team to keep an eye on. But Scott, what jumps out to you with these rankings here? It feels like to me, like I'm a little disappointed that Quentin Dormady didn't get the start in San Antonio because I know what to expect from him, and I think he's a damn good quarterback. But Chase Garbers, who has NFL experience, you know, on the bench, but still NFL experience. I think he was with the Raiders for 2 years. He's going to get the start to start this year. Thoughts on these quarterbacks, man? There's still a lot of question marks up in the air, and I think we have to consider, besides a few guys, that any one of these guys could get pulled at halftime. Like there's a couple guys that we should be scared of, right?
Definitely. I mean, if we remember last year, this goes for both XFL and USFL. A lot of split systems. They're figuring it out on the fly. Look, they don't have enough time to really get a true starting quarterback. I mean, aside from AJ and Case and Jordan, there's everybody else in my mind, at least the way I ranked them, is potentially willing, you know, could lose their seat within the first 3 weeks. So it's important to also remember that, like, you know, when you talk about snaps, none of these guys, except for a handful of them, are guaranteed 100% of the snaps. That's just the truth. So, you know, it's a week by week basis. We learned that last year, and you know, little things like, I'll give you an example. The reason why I don't have Jordan number 2 is because McClendon's good. He got a chance last year for the Vipers, and he looked good. And
exactly.
So if Tiama runs, he could get hurt a lot. There's no De'Aaron King anymore. So, you know, you've got this McClendon guy. I know they like to run the 2 quarterback system, so I can't give him the number 2 ranking.
Yeah.
Luis Perez, I heard they want to go younger and faster. I've never had faith in Luis Perez. You know, the dude's an amazing bowler. Quarterback, he's so. So for me, I feel like with a lot of the rankings and Chase, you know, San Antonio, I mean, they got Houston's basically whole coaching staff. You know what I mean? And AJ, offensive court. I mean, I think San Antonio is the team to look out for.
Dark horse.
Definitely. And I think, you know, with the battle there in Birmingham, it's up in the air. You got one guy who's been with the coach forever, been with the team forever, knows him. But then you got a new hotshot NFL kid coming in, getting all the hype. So
yeah.
It's going to depend. You know, I'm scared of, like, you know, I'm not going to play any of, you know, Michigan first week quarterback EJ or any, because I'm scared that they're just going to try it out. And I've listened to a lot of coach speak. They're basically saying when it comes to quarterbacks and running backs, they're going to see what they got week 1. I mean, you always, you know, practice wise, you always can get a feel for a guy, but they don't have a preseason. So this is it. You know what I mean? They're going to see what they got week 1. And I think the first 3 weeks, we're still going to be figuring out the real depth charts. So that's the way I kind of look at it. But, you know, basically all of our rankings are pretty close, you know, and I feel pretty good about it.
Let's get into running backs here. So Mark Thompson is probably out this week. Is that confirmed yet? I'm seeing projections where he's out. It seems like he might not play. Have you heard anything on that there, Scott?
I mean, I'm a big Gator guy, so I know he's been hanging out in Florida. I know he's not in Birmingham right now. I know that for a fact. So, and I know he's been talking shit about the field there when he got hurt. I know the injury's probably worse. I did hear some coach speak where he said, "Oh, he'll be out there week 1." I don't know. He's head above the rest. He's by far probably the best player in the league. He's got the most talent. He's got a Jeff Gordon thing about him where, I mean, was that Jeff Gordon? Who was, no, not Jeff Gordon. Who's the NFL player? The receiver last year, Josh Gordon, my bad. Josh Gordon.
Yeah.
He's got the Josh Gordon thing about him that scares me a little bit, where like he could just disappear. So I'm not playing him week 1. That's just my stand. But he's the best in the league. But yeah, I'm hearing he's banged up and he's going to be limited if he plays.
And for me, Abram Smith being injured is huge news. You know, you got Ja'Cour Pearson injured. He went to St. Louis, which they're already stacked. But Abram Smith being out for the whole year, he would have been probably number 2 or 3 for me, probably number 2. So that opens up a big hole there. And you got guys like Wes Hills, CJ Marable for Birmingham, Devion Smith, Darius Victor. And then it starts to get a little muddy. You know, I think we all think that Cameron Harris is the guy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he come in last year? There's no stats. I can't find stats. So I'm just, you know, this is all anecdotal. But he came in and scored, like a 2-touchdown game or something with Abram Smith out last year. It feels like Cameron Harris is the guy. But you've got some other guys there that could step up. Puka Williams is going to lose me money again because he got in trouble with the law and he's still on the team. And, you know, Coach Speak talking about how they could use him a wide receiver. That's scary. But, it seems like to me, without Abram Smith, these USFL teams have the better running backs. Is that what you think?
Yes. I mean, they were built around that. They played more of that style offense just in general. And, you know, you brought up Cameron Harris. I will bring up an old memory. So yeah, he did score 2 touchdowns and he vultured them basically. And right. Then come the championship game, all 3 of us, he was the min price. We were so hyped. Yes. We're like, okay, Abram Smith, there's no backup. Cameron Harris, he's got to get. I mean, he just vultured 2 touchdowns last week. He's got to. Didn't get a single snap.
You're right. I remember
Scored
that.
A goose egg and burned me. Burned
yes.
every single lineup I had. I had him 100%. I think I locked him in. So
yeah,
I'm iffy on Cameron Harris. If you can't even give the guy a snap, you know, I mean, Abram Smith basically rushed the ball every single time. So, you know, I'm iffy on him, but yeah, I mean, there's no real XFL running backs left if you look at the list. You know what I mean? I like a guy like John Lovett. He's on my list. I don't know if he's anybody on anybody else's list, but yeah, that's going to be, you know, he's still down the depth chart. You know what I mean? He's just like a flyer on a number 2 or a number 3, even with Bryce there. So, you know, for me, it's yes, you are correct. I think the USFL has the edge on the running backs, and they were just built that way. I think they're more NFL ready, more NFL style.
And I think a guy like Devion Smith right now is probably, you could bank on him getting a handful of goal line carries. I think, you know, he was one of these guys that got injured quite a bit last season. He'd leave for a drive and we'd all think we're screwed and he'd come back and score a touchdown. But he's one of these goal line guys that's going to get involved for sure. But, you know, let's talk about San Antonio here, Ellie, because, McFarland coming over from the NFL from the Steelers, this is a 4.4 40 dude. And being in San Antonio with A.J. Smith in this system where they're not going to use the running back as much to run the ball, like we saw it with Max Borgi last year, he retired. It seems like this is wide open for San Antonio. That's why I have all these guys kind of ranked a little bit lower. Like I did like a top like 15 or 20. It didn't really make it in the graphic here. But love it. You know, you got Bryson Aline, who was on Houston last year coming over. He stepped up big when Borgi was out, and McFarland. So I don't think we take enough stock with some of these guys that are coming from the NFL and, you know, how much better they can be realistically. Now, not all of them. So some of them are washed. But a guy like McFarland, man, like, what are we thinking about him, Ellie? Like, what do you think about some of these running backs here in San Antonio? Because it's kind of muddy, and I don't think I can commit to any one of them week 1.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. That's probably the way to approach it. It's one of those. We have other teams that have obvious injuries, obvious deficiencies, right? And then the other running back we're talking about, right? He might not even be able to play on Sunday. So I just think there's more sure spots than what we're going to see from San Antonio. And to your point, right? McFarland, Bryson Aline, Sean Lovett, they have enough people there to really just have kind of a running back by committee. And yeah, we just I don't know if we can necessarily rely on any one guy there. And I'm pretty sure Anthony McFarland is priced like he's going to get the snaps. So
yeah,
like, if that's the case, if we think that he's going to be sharing to any extent, like it's just it makes it hard to get there.
but all these guys from San Antonio are PPR beasts, in my opinion. Not all of them, but whoever the hell is actually starting, and maybe we won't even really know. Maybe it'll be kind of a by committee situation for the first few weeks. So it might be something I stay away from for now. The last guy I want to talk about here is Wayne Gallman, coming over from the Giants from the NFL. He got legit run in the NFL in some of these games, and him coming to St. Louis, no more Brian Hill. Thank God, Brian Hill was good, but how many heart attacks did I get when he, sprained his ankle or fell hard on the ground and was out for 2 quarters and then came back? I feel like that guy got injured more in game than anybody else in the league. But now we've got a guy like Wayne Gallman here. Thoughts on Wayne Gallman here? He doesn't seem like he's going to get a massive amount of run, as far as he's not going to get 20 carries a game, but he's going to get involved in the pass game and maybe a little bit of goal line situations. Scott, what do you think about Gallman?
I mean, anybody that I've ever played in an NFL showdown is got to be pretty good, right? I mean, he used to be the cheap guy, and there was a couple Giants games where I think he did make an optimal lineup in the NFL. A couple times, but I mean, look. I personally, the reason why I have Gallman down there and McFarland down there lower is because, what was it? Wade Phillips said that Chase was the closest thing he's seen to PJ Walker.
Yes, exactly.
So that was AJ Smith that said that. I got the feeling that these offenses want to throw the ball, and so St. Louis, even with Brian Hill, I mean, he was nice. I mean. But the bell cows are there up the top. The Devion Smiths, he's going to pound it. Like you said, that guy was like fucking invincible, right? Like he was just a fucking tank. So it's like, for these guys, I feel like the offenses, they have so many weapons, whether it be their quarterback or the receivers, that like, I'm not quite sure about the running back just yet. Does Gallman have like the highest skill set of most of these guys? Probably, yes. But I can't rate St. Louis running back super high yet when I know McCarron is going to throw the ball most of the time.
Oh, yeah. And his wide receivers are stacked. Let's talk about that now. So I think generally speaking, all of us except for Brother Phil has Hakeem Butler as number one. And even last year, this is a former Cardinal tight end that was drafted. And seeing him in camp that 1 year he was here before he got injured, I was like, this guy is a stud. He's an absolute stud. And as soon as I saw that he was in the XFL, I'm like, dude, I played the shit out of him week 1, and we talked about it on the show. He's probably, with Ja'Cory Pearson not being out there, I think that greatly benefits him. But St. Louis is stacked, dude. Darius Shepard, Blake Jackson coming over from Seattle last year. That's just the top 3 guys. There's multiple dude. I won't even talk about Marcel Aitman because I might have some heartburn if I talk about him. But there's a lot of dudes on this team that are really good. Jontre Kirkland is now in San Antonio. He had a great year until he got hurt. He was with Houston. A guy like Deion Kane though in Birmingham. Scott, talk to me about this situation here with Deion Kane. It seems like he's in a good spot. I know that there's some questionable, like who's going to be the quarterback, but does that really, how is that affecting your rankings going into the season on a guy like him?
Yeah, I mean, I've got him ranked. I still think he's ranked a little bit high on my list because I do think Butler, Adams, and Kirkland are ahead above the rest. And honestly, I think a guy like Darius Shepard is going to surprise again this year and probably creep up my list. So Kane, it's hard. Like I said, I rank based off who's throwing you the ball. I hate when people choose receivers just because they're the most skilled. You really have to look at who's throwing you the ball. And for me, I played Kane pretty much every week last year in USFL, but he had an amazing quarterback. I stacked him with this quarterback, Magoo. And now it's like, I got to kind of see who the quarterback's going to be. But if the hype behind Matt is real, then Kane could easily be the number one on my list. I just think guys like AJ, I'm a big St. Louis fan, and I just think between Butler, I mean, he's got Butler and Blake Jackson in the slot, right? Yeah. He's got Shepard on the out. I mean, the team is stacked.
And so Aitman on the outside. I mean, it's just crazy.
Exactly. And Jonathan Adams, this guy is a beast, man. This guy is a basketball player. This guy has a high vertical. I really liked playing him last year. He was under-owned last year, almost every slate, I felt like. And Kirkland, let's just be honest, Kirkland was by far the best player in the whole league the first couple weeks. It was a very sad situation when he got hurt. I was really felt for that guy. But, Kane is up there. He's my wild card because I got to see who's throwing on the ball, and I got to see what that guy looks like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, another guy, Deontay Burnett, moving from Houston to Arlington, he kind of took over when Jontre Kirkland went down. I mean, he had some good weeks. He was a little inconsistent, but I'll chalk that up to more of Houston as a whole kind of crumbled. And I think because of the quarterback play, it kind of went all downhill for them. But Deontay Burnett, to me, is one of these guys that maybe people aren't thinking enough about. Who else jumps out to you? Ellie, I see you have Amari Rodgers ranked. I have him ranked 2. I mean, we're talking about another NFL guy that might pick up some ownership just because he's kind of a name. But he's not really a huge name. He's a 6th-round pick. But for a guy for Birmingham, who else jumps out to you? Because we're not seeing any DC guys here. They lost a ton of wide receivers, and I think that's a big question mark. So what are your thoughts on some of these other guys, Ellie?
So I don't have anything necessarily too specific. I think Scott kind of made a great point there. I think the question is just how much we can rely on some of these quarterbacks to throw the ball. And Birmingham specifically, I think we saw something earlier today where we could even see something where Matt Corral and Jamar Smith are splitting time at quarterback, right? Like that's not something that's really exciting about any of these wide receivers. So yeah. I have Amari Rodgers at number 9, but with that kind of news, I may start kind of bumping him down and kind of just getting a little bit away from some of this exposure here, because to Scott's point, we know AJ McCarron's going to go fucking throw the ball to King Butler on Sunday, right? I'm going to just go rely on that. Week 1, I don't think we need to go out there and try and guess Matt Corral and Jamar Smith and who they're going to favorite their half of football with. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think it just goes to show that we probably got to be careful with who we play at quarterback this week. There's a couple guys that everybody knows is probably the guy, and they're not going to get pulled if they have a rough quarter or something. But we could also kind of play some of these dudes. So there's Garber. There's a lot of guys that Case Cookus, obviously. I think he's pretty solid as far as I'm not worried about him probably getting benched. But that just brings up some good points here. Let's move over to tight end. Let's try to breeze through this here. This is pretty straightforward. I think we all know that Cody Latimer is just a big-ass wide receiver. He's playing in the slot, so him and Alize Mack probably be on the field together. I think a lot of us have Alize Mack still ranked in the top 10. But when it comes to Cody Latimer, I think he's one of these guys, even on a really bad Orlando team with no quarterback until Dormandy step up. He still put up numbers. He still was the number 1 dude. Jay Sternberger for Birmingham. Talk a little bit about him, Scott. What am I missing with Sternberger? It seemed like he had a great year. It seemed like he was a really solid player. Are we thinking the same situation this year, even though there's a little bit of question mark at quarterback?
Yeah, this guy, Jace, is amazing. I mean, any USFL diehard is going to have him ranked number 1 over Cody. Now, we know Cody, we know what he is. He's a wide receiver. We know that. You know what I mean? Cody was basically the wide receiver 1 for Orlando last year. And so we don't need to talk about him, but Jace is awesome. I mean, he was basically my tight end I basically locked him in 100%, him and Sage, a lot last year for USFL. So to me, I think the tight end is a little bit safer because he's always been the number 1 in camps, especially let's say you're the number 3 quarterback on the depth chart in camp. You build that relationship with the wide receiver 6, right? You know what I mean? So it's kind of a situation where I think the tight end's been safe all along. I don't really care who the quarterback here is. Jace could easily be number 1. The guy's badass. I like him a lot. So to me, he's a safe play. He could easily be number 1.
Yeah, and Sal Cannella, Sage Surratt, 3rd, 4th. Cannella was up and down, but once Luis Perez came into town, it feels like he kind of hit his stride. I'm ranking him third. I think he's going to have a pretty good year. I personally don't think that Arlington is going to have a great year, but I think a guy like Sal Cannella, one of these guys that can rack up some points in week out. What do we need to know about Sage Surratt if for us XFL guys that don't know a ton about him?
Basically, same story as Jace. Just gets a lot of volume. I mean, him and to be honest with you, a lot of these XFL teams, at least with Jason Sage, that's why they're number 2 and 3 on my list. Is that so much funneling went to these guys. Targets, there was some high target share games, but just pure volume. And like I said, they're skilled. These guys are good. Sal, I got Sal at 4. He probably should be higher, but I just can't. Sal burned me. I know Sal had, I think he had the relationship with Plitt. I think him and Plitt went back. And then once Plitt was Perez, the Sal thing kind of died down. And honestly, I don't know, man. I watched every single one of those games and I basically had Sal in every single line. And I just thought, I don't think he's that. I'm not going to call him dust, but he could easily drop down to the 8, 9, 10 range for me right now. So I think the top 3 is there. The rest of the line is questionable. I think a guy like Caden Smith in DC could pop up.
Yeah.
Everybody else are kind of more blocking based. Cole out of Michigan could step up. But everybody else are kind of blocking tight ends. I think this is going to be the year where we're going to see a really condensed DFS tight end pool. And I think we're all going to play the same 3 or 4 guys. And it's like, who got the right guy and maybe who doubled, you know what I mean? Who went 2 tight ends. So it's going to be that kind of year, but I think those top 3 are the clear-cut 3, and I think everybody else is a question mark, and I think there's a couple sneaky guys that aren't on any of our lists that are going to pop up within week 2 or week 3.
Yeah, you know it. All right, let's get into week 1. Let's talk about these matchups here. Let's do it. So, we got Birmingham going into Arlington. That's on Saturday, and the great thing about this is these games are all going to be nationally televised. We're looking at ESPN, ABC, Fox, maybe a couple ESPN2 here and there, but it's not going to be hard to find these games. Kind of like last year, it was difficult at some point. So this is the XFL versus USFL champion first game of the year. This should be a good one here. We got St. Louis on the road week 1 going into Detroit. I think we all expect St. Louis to come out slinging. To me, this is the best team in the league. It's just between them and Birmingham. I think they're the best team in the league. DC Defenders going into San Antonio. Man, call me crazy, but I just don't know why the books. I don't know why a lot of these touts are ranking San Antonio so low. I know there's some question marks there, but it feels like to me that San Antonio's live to upset DC. Now, when DC plays at home, we know that they're undefeated. It's a little bit of a different story. But, man, I feel like San Antonio can win this game. But DC is still one of the top teams out there. We just got to see kind of what they're going to do with no Abram Smith and no wide receivers, really. I mean, they have some talented guys, but they've been gutted wide receiver wise. The last game on Sunday is Memphis Showboats going into Houston to play the Gamble Necks. So what are we thinking here, man? Let's look at the lines here before we move any further. Let's look at these Vegas lines from Draftkings. Let me pull this up. Give me 1 second. So Stallions, and this is, to me, this is to get a feel for what the field is going to be thinking, and just kind of see where ownership is going to go. But Birmingham's favored by 3, 42.5 point total on the road. I feel like the Arlington's going to get whooped up here. I don't know. That's just me. I'm not super high on Arlington this year. They really did not do a whole lot last year throughout the season until they actually got their guy. What do you guys think, Ellie? What do you think about this? Am I crazy? But I just think Birmingham's gonna crush them.
Yeah, look, man. I think pro, semi-pro. I still like to be a little bit cautious. I think crush is if we want to quantify that, we're talking about what, maybe 3.5 to 10 points. So, yeah, I think Birmingham probably wins this game by 7 to 10. I think there's still a little bit of question marks behind the Arlington Renegades, and just in week 1, like I think you can kind of chalk some of this stuff up to talent. No, the Birmingham Stallions do have a little bit more talent on their roster, I feel like, from top to bottom. So I do think this is one I'd probably go Birmingham.
Yeah, where are you leaning there, Scott?
I think it's going to be closer than people think, but I'm leaning Birmingham. I think it will be closer. I mean, I love the fact that it's the first game. I think it's great. I think it's like Saturday. I think is going to be a good day. So
yeah, it is, man. I'm excited to be building lineups there right before lock at 1 p.m. Eastern. Let's move over to let's go to the Saturday game here. St. Louis, 6.5-point favorites on the road against the Panthers. I honestly don't see an upset happening here. That's just me. But St. Louis is going to be a team that I'm going to be heavy on DFS wise, but I think everybody else is as well. So we're gonna have to find ways to get different. We're gonna have to build some lineups and figure that out and look at ownership. But where are we going here with this? And any stacks or anything jump out to you here for St. Louis versus the Panthers?
Yeah, so I'll just hop in real quick here. The one thing that I do want to talk about on this one is just I don't know if we have a continuity score when it comes to some of these teams, but out of all of them, I think St. Louis Battlehawks, AJ McCarron, this offense, they might be. And Scott, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but they might be the team with the most continuity coming back from last year. So I think that does give them immediate advantage just when it comes into the season, just in general. But in week one, they're already favored by minus 290, almost a touchdown. I think you can kind of just expect them to keep rolling here.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just going to say that I absolutely agree. I mean, I personally think I live in Los Angeles. I can't bet for anything. California, that's just the way we are here. But I would smash the over on this game. I think St. Louis could score 42 points on their own. But, I think this is the one potential blowout game. And I just think St. Louis is just a well-oiled machine. And I just think they're gonna lay the smack down. So.
Yeah, they had 3 all XFL offensive linemen all returning, and I believe they have all 5 guys returning. So that offensive line is steady, and their skill players are insane. The big question mark, is defensively. I think they've improved at least a little bit defensively, because last year I feel like they were a team that you could kind of target as a shootout defense. But maybe we'll see their defense step up a little bit this year and maybe not be such a pass funnel. All right, let's go to this other game here. DC going into San Antonio, noon on Sunday. DC's 6-point favorites here. I really do think, in my opinion, that when it comes to going to the playoffs, it's going to be between these two teams for this XFL division. And I think that maybe this is just wishful thinking. Maybe I'm just trying to give a bold take here, but I think that San Antonio edges them out. What are your thoughts on this game particularly, though, Scott? It seems like everybody and their brother is going to be playing DC Defender stacks and going heavy here. I don't think that the Brahmas are bad defensively. We know that DC is pretty good defensively. The biggest question mark is Garbers. If he comes out and sucks it up the first quarter, we might see Dormandy at half. Who knows? But I'm hoping, because I know that Dormandy is a pretty damn good quarterback for spring football, in my opinion, that Garbers is just so much better that this guy could be a really good player. And I think that there's upset potential in this game.
Definitely. I mean, I got San Antonio outright winning, so +6 is a no-brainer for me. If it was in DC, I think maybe I would lean DC just because they've got a really good home crowd. But I definitely think Tiamo's in a good spot. I would definitely play him, but we're still trying to figure out that wide receiver room, like who exactly is going to be the guy. But yeah, man, I got San Antonio winning this one at +6. I think it's a no-brainer.
Ellie, what do you think?
Sorry. I think Scott got a lot of it right. I think really just the biggest question for me in general is what are we going to see from DC? Last year it was just run the ball, and there's just so much limited upside, so very limited upside when it comes to that, like outside of Ta'amu, that I don't know. And with Abram Smith being gone for an extended period of time, like how is that going to impact them? Because Abram Smith was he was a baller last year, man. He was a really good running back. So losing that kind of firepower in your offense. Scott calling out, the wide receiver. We don't know what the wide receiver room is really going to, pan out to be. I think there's more question marks here with the DC than people are kind of acknowledging here. And again, like it's kind of crazy to have a -278, -275 favorite on the road. Like I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That seems a little bit kind of disrespectful in my opinion. I think the Brahmas are a little bit better than that. And Scott, thank you for that. I'll go ahead and put some money on Brahmas +6. I like that.
I already, when I was traveling, I was in a legal state. I already put like $20 on them to outright win. I think it was like +1,400 or something.
Oh shit.
The biggest concern for me when it comes to Te'amu is McClendon/Francois. Like, how are they? We saw Derek King get a ton of goal line opportunities. Now, as the season went along, they kind of got away from that, and they actually ended up passing the ball more. We saw Lucky Jackson, Chris Blair, these guys actually absolutely crush as the season went on. But to start the year, man, they were running the ball a ton. They were running the ball a lot, and their defense was looking really good. But, getting if they get down to the 5-yard line and they throw Francois or McClendon in to kind of mix it up, it kind of hurts. It hurts Te'amu quite a bit. I just don't know if they're going to get away from what they did towards the end of the year, or if they're going to go back to kind of their origins last year. It's a big question mark for me. All right, let's go to this last game here, and then we'll get into the breakdown. We'll go player by player. We're going to open up Run the Sims. They have projections and all that fun stuff. Memphis Showboats against Houston Roughnecks. So to me, Houston, I feel like they're probably the consensus, maybe the worst team. This feels like a flip a coin sort of game. I do feel like Memphis can come out and pass the ball. They got DiFilippo coming over from New Orleans Breakers from last year. And Case Cook he can cook, man. This guy can throw the ball. You got Jonathan Adams there. This feels like a Memphis Showboat win. Like, to me, the Memphis Showboats, with my limited knowledge of USFL, feel like one of these teams that could overachieve and put up some numbers this year. Scott, what do you think about that?
Definitely. I like Memphis to win this game, but I think this is going to be the defensive game here. I think we're looking at two good defenses. Houston might have the best defense. No one really knows, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored here. And I think if the points are scored, they're scored on Memphis' side.
Got it. Roughnecks wise, who are we looking at? I don't have it pulled up. Who's their backup that should fill in for Mark Thompson this week? Because he's probably going to be one of the higher owned guys.
Yeah, so you got two. You got Pledger and Evans. And Pledger, I played a lot last year. Evans has a lot of hype behind him. So I personally think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think Mark will probably try to give it a whirl, and we'll see if that happens or not. We'll get that news soon, but they'll be going with Evans and Pledger, and even then, Memphis should have a fairly good defense. So I'm not liking too much on that side. And again, when it talks to the quarterback player, I mean, they announced Jared as the starter, and ever since then, everybody's been shitting on this guy. So it's hard for me to have any faith if everybody's already talking about who's the number two, and that's the real conversation right now with Houston. It's so weird. The conversation in the industry is who's the number two. Is it Reed Sinnett or is it Nolan Henderson? And what I've been told, or what I've heard from coach speak, is that he's going to start Jarrett, and then at some point in time, early, maybe even first quarter, he's going to start to just bring in that number two. And so people keep asking him, who's the number two? Who's the number two? And that's kind of the whole hype behind the team right now. Is Mark going to play, and who's the number two? So, I think they're a mess right now. I'd stay away from them DFS wise for right now, but I'd take some shots at their defense.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. All right, let's get into this breakdown. We're going to go position by position and just run down things. We'll build a lineup together, and then we'll send it out. Let's do this breakdown. Let's do it. Break it down. All right. So we've got Run the Sims up. So if you guys are looking for projections, ownership projections, and optimizer, they've got a game simulator for Showdown. Check out Run the Sims. Those guys over there know their stuff when it comes to XFL and USFL and spring football. So if you guys want to jump in on that, it's 1 month. I think it's like $49.99. Use the promo code EDGE and you'll get 10% off on that. So, check them out. This is a pretty cool tool. I went out and just bought it and I was like, oh, this is pretty sick. Like, I like this. I like the projections. I like to see, because there's a lot of sites out there that are running UFL and spring football just as an extra, and they don't really have the in-house guys, experts. I think these guys are experts. All right, so let's go position by position. Let me switch over to the zoomed in here.
While you're pulling that up, I just have one more comment on this. Like, guys, we're gonna be quoting, we're gonna be showing you tweets from Run the Sims all the time, and we're not even fucking paid to be advertising for these guys. We like their Sims, we like their projections, so we're gonna use them here on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And at a certain point, we're gonna see what SaberSim puts out. I'm probably going to be aggregating a lot of different projections, ownership projections, obviously. But right now, SaberSim doesn't have anything up. And I know for a fact that Run the Sims does. So let's talk about them. So let's talk about quarterback here. AJ McCarron's $11K. He's the most expensive guy. He's going to be the highest owned, you'd have to think. Although we're seeing some ownership projections really boosting up Chase Garbers for San Antonio. Right now he seems to be the highest owned. I think I don't think that'll last. But look, Chase Garbers is 8,500. And if he's really a guy that can come out there and play the whole game, 8,500 is a decent price. Jordan Teamu's 10.3, Matt Corral's 9,800, Case Cook is 10K, and then you got some muddy water down here at the bottom here. So Scott, what are your thoughts on stacking wise? How spread out are you going to be because of the unknowns? Are you willing to just eat the chalk and say, I'm going to play a lot of AJ McCarron, I'm going to play a lot of Teamu, and I'm going to sprinkle in some of these other guys, in my lineups? Or is that going to just be too hard to get different? You're going to have to play like Katie Cannon at 80% or something crazy like that. Like, what are your thoughts on these quarterbacks? Are you sticking with the chalk?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough call. I clearly haven't built lineups. Shout out to Run the Sims for having the balls to put out projections. I think they're the only ones who have projections out right now. So shout out to them. I know Justin and those guys know their shit. So I'm happy to see some projections up. But yeah, I haven't gotten into the optimizing yet, into the simulations yet. But here's what I would say. You can play it safe and you can go with AJ. You can play it safe, and I think Chase is pretty safe. I don't think D-Day sees a snap. I think Chase gets the full game unless he just looks like garbage. I think you can play it safe with Jordan. I think McClendon might get a couple goal line vulture, snaps. Matt, we don't know about yet. Case, I think it's safe to play Case, but and Luis Perez. I think there's a couple safe plays, but here's my thoughts. I would love to just play it safe, but it's week 1. You don't know what's going to happen. They might go with the hot hand. If some weirdo comes out there and you're like, oh, who the hell is this guy? I mean, it's happened just so much week 1. So it's like, I want to tell everybody to play it safe, but I kind of feel like there's going to be somebody that just pops up that's optimal because of his price and just ownership. We all know that in this league, it's all about ownership. If you're on somebody that no one else is on. Last year, the first couple weeks, there was 15,000 on average in true optimals. What people actually left on the table, what people actually drafted was like 49,500 as the optimal, but the true optimal had like 15,000 on the table, and the true optimal had at least 5 or 6 players that were completely unknown. Yeah. And that, I think we're in a little bit better position this year to say, hey, there's more data. It's a tighter pool. And hopefully we get some solid depth charts, but it's going to be tricky. I personally love AJ. That's just me. I'm always going to be on AJ every single week. I think he's just got the receivers behind him, and he's got I think the last year really showed what he can do, and a shiny new toy like Blake Jackson is nice, and to have Shepard and Butler. So I'm going to go with AJ, but I don't want to tell everybody that because I think there's just going to be some quarterbacks that really shine and potentially end up in the optimal lineup.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Gudkowski, the OC, and McCarron, they really shined last year. I expect the continuity for them to just hit the ground running. And like you said, I think they could probably put up 40-plus points just themselves. Ellie, anything else to talk about here? What's going to be your exposure to Garbers? Because he's so cheap. I want to see some more ownership projections. I don't think people are going to be excited to play him, and I don't think that the casual fan is going to be playing a lot of San Antonio at all, even though they probably should be. Are you gonna get some exposure to Garbers this week 1?
Yeah, I absolutely am. I mean, look, so I already think San Antonio can potentially beat DC outright, right? So like if we, I love Run the Sims and I appreciate the projections, but we also need to consider like what happens if some of these Vegas lines that we're getting here are inaccurate, right? So like if some of these teams are not favored when they should be, for example, then that kind of changes some of the projections that we're looking at here. So look, man, I think Chase Garbers at 8,500 is definitely somebody that we're going to want to play. I definitely think we got to get some exposure to these guys that we think can outright upset these teams that are coming in favored.
Nobody's going to play Gorantano. Nobody. I'm gonna get to some lineups with him just in case if this guy is just massively impressive. It wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't. There's a reason why they named him. Like he was one of the first named starting quarterbacks that we saw realistically. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but dude, we're just gonna get this out of the way. We're gonna refer to him as Guantanamo Bay from moving forward. There's no way we're getting that on a consistent basis. There you go.
So. There you go.
Rest in peace, Dimebag Darrell. Not the real Dimebag Darrell, but Devin Darrington. I expect him to be on a team within the next few weeks, you'd think. Running backs. All right, let's get through this. Wes Hills, 8,900. Darius Victor, 8,400. TJ Pledger is getting the bulk share of the projections for Houston, with Mark Thompson potentially being out. We got to monitor that quite a bit. Ears to the ground, try to figure out actually who's gonna start if Thompson's out. Wayne Gallman's getting some projections, probably because of that total there. Cameron Harris, a 7,500. Scotty, who jumps out to you here, man? Like, what are we doing? Are we doing two running back lineups? We got a running back in the flex. It feels like these guys are very safe, but at the same time, I just don't know how much they're going to get utilized. Maybe we just go heavy with these USFL guys who we know are going to get run.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it. I think they're clearly safe. And, that usually leads me to think that most people will go to running backs because you can afford it, which would make me lean towards playing only one running back, because I think last year we saw with XFL at least, receivers tended to outscore the running backs because there was a lot of. I mean, look, here's what I would say about these running backs, because this is a safer position than quarterback even right now, right? Because we kind of know who the starter and the bell cow is going to be. So if it's a bell cow, go for it. I'd play a lot of Wes Hills, a lot of Victor, a lot of Devion Smith, Maribel. I'd play a lot of those guys. Everybody else is kind of a nice, sneaky move. So if I was building a lineup right now, I might just full-blown, if I was building a single lineup right now, I might just leave the top guys out and try to find who this sneaky, cheap, secondary, no ownership running back's going to be. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and, mix it up. Like, to me, San Antonio is, if you're going to get weird with it, Bryson Aline, John Lovett, I feel like, even Anthony McFarland is probably not going to be owned. But to me, that feels like such a muddy situation. But there's a lot of PPR points there that can go around. That's an interesting thing to look at. Birmingham, you got Larry Roundtree, which I believe he was a Charger, 2 years ago or last year? So you have ex-NFL guy. You got Maribel at 7,900. There's just a ton of options here. And even a guy like Cameron Harris, who is we have no clue how good this guy is going to be. We really don't. He could come out and be the leading rusher. He could come out and not even be the starter week 2. That's the scary part. But because of the system that he's in, I think that he gets a decent boost. I'm going to have a decent amount of him. But we're going to have to play it by ear, man. Ellie, who jumps out to you as an option besides these studs? Is there any of these rando, XFL guys like John Lovett? Any of these randos? Are you playing any Puka Williams this week? Are you crazy enough to do that?
So that's a great way to start this. I'm not crazy enough to do that. Again, I think DC is just such a weird team in general, just because we don't know, is Jordan Ta'amu going to carry the ball 15 times? Like I if that's the case, like I don't know if I want any of their running backs, right? Like we know Cameron Harris can be the number one or whatever. It's just diluting the share, the carry pool too much, or whatever the fuck however you say it. Look, a guy, you go back to that continuity thing we were talking about with St. Louis. Like a guy that I think could be a little bit interesting, Mateo Durant, actually at 5,300, right? I like Wayne Gallman, Jacob Sailors, whatever the hell his name is. Like these guys weren't on the Battlehawks last year. Mateo Durant has a little bit of consistency with this team, right? Maybe he gets involved in the passing game to some extent, and there's less risk in this range in general, right? 5,300, 5K, Larry Roundtree, I might be okay with a 5-point projection, a 6-point projection. If you're paying 8,500 for Wayne Gallman, this slate is surprisingly efficiently priced, considering how many unknowns there are. Right? If you're playing 8,500 Wayne Gallman, you're going to need him to go out and get 90 yards and a touchdown. Quite frankly, like I'm looking for guys who might get involved in the PPR game. So again, Mateo Durant's just kind of a guy off the top of my head that I think has the ability to do that. But again, that's more of a price that I'm willing to play here, not necessarily a name. Like you're not going to catch me with 80% Mateo Durant on Sunday or Saturday. Like, I'll have like 15% or some shit.
So yeah, and if I was just to give a pick real quick, I would go with Evans. If I'm gonna give kind of a lower own based on their projections, I would go with Evans, the kid out of Louisville. If Mark Thompson misses, Evans could be a steal at that price. Let's see where he is. I think he's like 5,100. Is he on that list?
He's not. He's not added on that list. But I saw a tweet that was from someone that was saying that that maybe Evans would be the guy.
5,100. 5,100 Tyon. I don't even know how to say his name, but Evans 5,100. To me, would be the low owned play I go with right now if Thompson misses.
It wouldn't surprise me if Pledger is like 20% owned. This other guy, Evans, comes out and gets all the snaps. It wouldn't surprise me. All right, let's go to wide receiver here. All right, so Hakeem Butler is going to be the highest owned, probably potentially on the slate. Darius Shepard, who a lot of people are talking about Blake Jackson. I think Darius Shepard is set up this year to absolutely crush, being on the outside. Talk to me about some of these top end guys while I shut my dog up here. Ellie, you're muted. You're muted, bro.
All right. I was saying we got some of the running backs still in here if you want to pull them out when you get a second. But look, it's pretty easy, right? Like Hakeem Butler's a fucking stud. You can just pull my tape last year, I think. But we had that shit on repeat, right? Scott, play Hakeem Butler. Like I don't know what else to do. He's a grown ass man. Like he's the AJ Brown of the XFL or what UFL at this point, right? Like I don't know what else to say. Darius Shepard, he's a guy that, man, I really liked him too. Like, we're just getting caught up on St. Louis, but everybody already knows to play those guys. But like, man, I think this is what you're talking about with AJ McCarron though, at the beginning, right? Like, it's so hard. Like, you want to play some of these other guys so that you have a little bit of leverage. You're not playing the chalky quarterback, but you have AJ McCarron, the best quarterback in the league, throwing to the best wide receiver core in the league. So like, we didn't get too far, Tyson, while you're talking about the dogs. I didn't even give Scott a chance to talk, but we're both fawning over Hakeem Butler and Darius Shepard. I'll let you put some input there, Scotty.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I mean, those were our guys last year. I think Shepard still has a chip. He's got something to prove. I think we saw him get some true snaps for the Packers last year, right? Wasn't it the Packers last year? this past season. I could swear he got on the field a couple times, but I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. I really like the price on Darius Shepherd. So Butler's my guy. He's always going to be my guy. Battlehawks are my team. AJ's my guy. But, here's what I would say to the casual out there. And you can see it in this base projections here with Run the Sims, is that don't let the tight end tag scare you off. They're truly bunched in wide receiver / tight end on purpose, because these guys are basically receivers. So, there's definitely some Run the Sims definitely is making some bold calls on like Justin Hall and Kiki here. But, for me, I definitely can. I would say that play the safe plays, because I think week one, no matter what, they're going to get targets. Whether they catch those balls or not, they're going to get targets. So play the safe plays. But again, this is the position where you've got to do a deep dive. You know what I mean? You've got to do a real deep dive, because it's going to be like a guy like Trey Quinn last year for USFL. He was a great cheap play. He's a little bit more expensive this year, but he's great. And there's just going to be a lot of receivers. We'll talk about this down the line, and if you come in the Discord, we'll always be having a conversation about it. But in general, this is the position where you got to do a true deep dive and take a stand on a really cheap guy, because this is where you leave salary on the table. You go with a stud like a Hakeem Butler, you go with the value like a Darius Shepherd, and then you start to look for some really low-owned, under 4K plays, in my opinion. And I guarantee you somebody in the 4K range will end up in the optimal week one.
There's
at least the true optimal.
Yeah, there's a ton of dudes down here, especially for DC. We don't, DC is a pretty high-powered offense. They could throw the ball last year towards the end of that year. Any of these dudes could absolutely come out. Harmon, Chris Rowland, Brandon Smith. Brandon Smith, to me, feels like one of the top dudes. Kiki Coutier, obviously he's a name. We remember him as being kind of a bust, and for the Texans. But he's a guy that he's 8,500. He's priced up. I don't know how much I'm going to get to him, because I just don't really know if he is the actual guy. So there's a ton of dudes down here, man. Like they bunched all their tight ends with the wide receivers, so it's kind of hard to differentiate them. But like Javonte Payton, 4,500. I'm just looking at these dudes, and it's just like any one of these guys could absolutely score a touchdown or go off. So to me, running back, we could probably play it safe, maybe get one rando. But when it comes to wide receiver and even a little bit of tight end action, I feel like you could choose from a lot of these different dudes down here. Let's talk about tight end, just briefly. There's not a whole lot to talk about. Sternberger, Latimer, Sage Surratt, Sal Cannella. Are you going any weirder than that? Are you getting Elise Mack? Are you getting Caden Smith? Are you getting to any of these dudes that probably aren't going to be high owned, but some of these DC tight ends, we don't even know who the primary pass catcher is. Maybe that they benefit the first few weeks until they figure that out. Cole from Michigan. What are your thoughts on these tight ends? Should we go chalky? Should we just min one of the top three guys, sort of a situation? Do we absolutely need a tight end? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the average player is going to build quite chalky. And I think we all know if you dupe in this, you're building the wrong lineup. This is a no dupe kind of situation here. This isn't like NBA or NFL where you kind of build a lineup and you're like, well, it's a great looking lineup, but I'm going to chop with 100 people. Someone this week could win by 20, 30 points, right? And have a solo lineup just head above everybody else. And that's really going to come down to, choosing, getting off of the chalk, like playing some safe plays and getting off. And I think getting off of it will be maybe a sneaky tight end. I just saw some really good cheap priced tight ends that I think could end up in the optimal easy. Look, it's week one. When you're a quarterback, if you've got a running back that you're going to dump off to, if you got a tight end that you got 5-10 yards, you're probably going to play it safe in some offenses. And also, if you're a quarterback in jeopardy of losing your job, you tend to dump off to your running back or throw it to your tight end for 5 to 10 yards and play the safe game, right? Rather than maybe throw a pick down the field. So to me, they have the benefit week one for sure for a target share. I think the studs, the Jaces and the Codys are going to be up there. The Sages, they're going to be up there at the top. But there's some really good priced tight ends I'm seeing right now. I haven't really thoroughly gone through pricing and given everybody a rank, but just with you scrolling, I can see there's some tight ends down there that I would definitely take a shot at. But overall, when it comes to a build, don't be scared to go 2 tight ends. I'm not going to say do 3 tight ends, but don't be scared to do 2 tight ends, and don't be scared to, go venture down to the bottom. I like the bottom, actually. The bottom's looking quite juicy to me. So I'm getting excited to build a lineup just looking at the bottom right now. So
yeah, it feels like to me, if you're going to go chalk, if you're going to go AJ McCarron, you could probably play a Darius Shepard or Hakeem Butler, but get crazy. Go down and grab one of these one of these wide receivers that could step up, especially for some of these teams that we don't quite know who the quarterback fully is going to be. Stack them with some randos. If you're going to go chalk heavy, get your quarterback and a pass catcher that's probably going to be very low owned. That could be some huge leverage. All right, let's go to defense. So, Battlehawks, maybe it's the matchup, but Battlehawks are getting the highest projection right now. This stuff is going to change, obviously. So make sure you guys check out Run the Sims. Make sure you guys jump in the Discord. A lot of this stuff is going to change. We're recording this on Wednesday night. But as of right now, $4,600 Battlehawks are getting some love. Me personally, I just want to sort by salary and look at the cheapest team here. Panthers, going up against St. Louis, I'm probably not going that route. But shit, look at the Brahmas at 3,800. Going up against DC with they don't have a lot of talented skill position guys, really, at this point. I'm sure some of them will step up, but week 1, Brahmas could be an interesting pick. Houston, 4,400. They have a pretty decent defense. You got the defenders, obviously. Scott, Ellie, briefly, what's your approach to defenses for this slate? Are you unchecking anybody? Are you going to be really spread out, like max exposure, like 20%? Or is there a defense that you're like, dude, I'm just going to get over the field on them? Scott?
Yeah, I'm going to be over the field on Memphis. But I can just tell you guys this flat out. It's just like NFL. Scroll your cheapest defense, plug them in. It's week 1 through 3. That's pretty much the best way to play it. I mean, look, if you got a lot of salary left over, then maybe go for the better defense that you feel good about. But it's week 1 through 3. A defense could put up 20 points. It happens in the NFL all the time. And it always kills people's lineups. Are you like, I had the best lineup, but some asshole had this defense that scored 20 points because it's week 1 through 3 and everybody's still trying to figure things out. But I'm going heavy Showboats week 1.
Nice. Good to know. Ellie, where are you at?
Yeah, I'm a Scott in this. I don't think you cross anybody off necessarily. I think if anybody's close enough, it's probably going to be whoever's playing AJ McCarron in the St. Louis Battlehawks. But outside of that, I think you need to have balanced exposure. This is probably not a slate where the pricing is efficient, but I don't think it's perfectly efficient. So you probably can play whatever defense you want within whatever you think is going to happen. Just don't fucking run a stack against your defense. Just common sense stuff like that.
Yeah, and the Roughnecks offense, I think, is a big question mark. So, getting a 4K defense that has pretty high upside potential for pick 6, all that fun stuff. You're gonna if there's a touchdown scored by one of these defenses, you're gonna need them. I don't care what price they are, which is why I'm gonna spread my damn self out and not really go too heavy on one team. If I had to pick one team not to play, it's probably the Panthers. But shit, maybe I'll get a little bit of them. I mean, maybe I'll just get a little bit. All right, let's get into our lineup build here. So make sure you guys are in that Discord. That's free to join. We do have our YouTube membership, which is $3.99 a month. Just helps support the channel. And I'll be doing a full write-up each week for the main slate for that. And you get a private paid channel within the Discord to chat it up. We're going to also be doing just kind of like what we did last year, where we build that kind of single entry go-to lineup. Ellie and I are both going to build that, and we'll post that in the Discord in that private YouTube channel. All right, so let's build a lineup. So Scotty, what are you thinking here, man? Do we let's build our like single entry kind of chalky, but like just a little bit different Let's build that first and get an idea kind of where we want to go, and then we'll pivot a little bit. We got to go AJ McCarron and Hakeem Butler right off the bat for this, right?
I think so. I mean, AJ Hakeem and Shepard. If we're trying to get less wrong week one in cash, right? We're trying to get less wrong. So I think that that's the way I'd start my build if I was playing cash.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we need a run back here. I think this is as correlated as we might need to be for this particular lineup, especially week one. So let's start grabbing one-off dudes. Maybe you can go defense and running back sort of situation. You could do that. But where are we going now? Let's just grab our running back first. Is this a Wes Hills? Is this where are we going running back wise? Who do you think is going to be the highest owned? Darius Victor? If Mark Thompson doesn't play, do we want to risk it with the backup Pledger? I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, Victor and Memphis would be a nice duo.
Let's do it.
I am seeing that Run the Sims is thinking Victor's ownership's going to be pretty high.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Can you plug in? Can you plug in those two? Can you plug in those two and see what it looks like?
Yep.
That's juicy right there. That is plenty of money to make a winning lineup right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We got 2 flex spots, so we can go wherever the hell we want. We can put in 2 tight ends if we want. We can do whatever the hell we want. So do you want to find the value first? And one of these guys at the bottom end that you might be comfortable with for a single entry that might just be mispriced completely? Does anybody jump out to you, or do you want to find the stud and then fill it in from there?
I usually like to. I mean, I'll let Ellie decide, but I usually like to go with the value first and then see how much I have left for the stud.
Yeah. I'm with Scott on this too. I'd rather just find a value guy we're comfortable with playing and then seeing what we have left.
I mean, all these San Antonio wide receivers, we don't really know where that's going to go. You got TJ Vasher, who burned me 1,000,000 times last year, but I can't quit you. I'm probably going to go back to the well. Jordan Thomas, backup tight end. I mean, B. Riley Moore McKinney at 3K, who on paper could be the starter. You got Caden Smith there with NFL experience. Is he the guy? We saw B. Riley Moore score multiple touchdowns last year. Jordan Thomas for the Jordan Thomas from Orlando is on Birmingham this year. That makes sense. What are we doing? Bargain hunting down here, Scott. Who jumps out to you as a guy that you'd be pretty comfortable with? Maybe even just taking 2 or 3 or 4 fantasy points in order to get that better dude in the other flex spot.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've actually gone down here. I'm pretty superstitious when it comes to getting in here too early. But I mean, look, there's some names that look good. I mean, I don't know why, but it's tough because I guess Brandon Smith, he's 4,900. That's a little too expensive, but I think Brandon Smith might step up for DC as the number one. That's just one of my predictions. I think Merritt for Houston could step up as the number one. That's another prediction.
Yeah, you have Hall and Henney, who are both playing slot. So are they both going to be on the field at the same time? We know that Merritt would probably be out there all the time.
Yeah, so I mean, any of those guys, I would easily take a stab on. They seem pretty safe. I don't feel. I feel like this year we're going to see a lot more of the blocking tight end versus I think they're going to have a clear-cut one receiver and then the clear-cut blocker versus say like DC last year or Vegas in particular. They played 4 tight ends and they threw it to all 4 of them. Yeah. So it's like the tight ends are going to be a tough call. I'd probably take a stab on a 3K receiver, a 3 to 4K receiver here. But it is a tough call. I mean, there's a lot of names, guys. I won't lie, but it's a tough call. I'm definitely going through it right now. Look, Sig Jr., the tight end for Houston, he's somebody at 2,700. I think could do something. But yeah, I mean,
throw him in because this is our kind of cashy build, right? So if we're gonna run this in a single entry, Sig Jr. hitting a 0 at 2,700 isn't gonna kill us. But he comes out with 4 or 5 points, 8,800. What does that give us, Tyson? Mark Thompson, if that dude's active.
Yeah, Ballman, Coutier, Kirkland. I mean, you leave a little bit on the table. You can do whatever the hell you want. If you wanted to go up more in the let's say 35 or so range.
Well, here, let's do it backwards, Tyson. Throw in Jonathan Adams. We all like him, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. We just saw that we had a little bit of flexibility here, so we'll throw in him. Oh, that gives us 3,400.
Can't quite get to
Alizé.
We can't quite get to Alizé Mack, but Braden Bowman, KD Cannon. If D-Day was playing, I'd be jamming in a little bit of KD Cannon and probably losing a lot of money. But you guys get the point here. 3,400. You could eat it and possibly, risk getting not as many points from this position. But look at this lineup besides this position. I mean, this is nuts.
And I would say there's a good play right there. Justin Smith at 3,200. If you guys remember him with Houston last year, he's got the same. AJ brought him back, so it looks like Justin Smith is sitting pretty juicy at 3,200.
That's not bad. For those listening on the podcast, McCarron, Victor, Butler, Shepard, Adams, Showboats, open spot with 3,400. We plugged in Justin Smith. Decent, for a Wednesday night with not all the information. Decent start to the builds. Now let's build one tournament lineup. Where do you guys want to go for stack wise? Do you want to get weird with it? Do you want to go like a Case Cookus with some of his pass catchers? Do we want to just embrace the chalk and go to some of these weird like third, fourth string dudes who potentially could be first string guys? Where do you want to go, Scotty? What are you thinking here?
In GPPs, I'm going Garbers at 8,500. That's just me personally.
Let's do it. Like, I think San Antonio is going to be good.
And then we could bring in Kirkland maybe, right? Get Kirkland action going on.
Let's do it. Let me grab him.
So, Kirkland, this is going to be awful. Like 8 people are going to get this out of the, 400 watching for UFL. Kirkland, every time I hear his name, I think of Kirk Franklin. So, yeah.
I'm going to lead in the show next week with some Kirk Franklin.
Dude, he's actually badass, man. He's a good musical artist.
Do you want to go Cody Latimer here? Do you want to do a nice little 2-stack? Like, what are your limits to stacking week one?
Let's do the 2 tight end build. Let's go Cody and Jace.
Let's do it.
Because I like this build. The price on Jace at 6,100 is ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer the stacking part for Scott real quick. He's been kind of alluding into it the whole show, but this is week 1. I think we're trying to get less wrong, right? And if we like Garbers, right, just fucking get his pass catchers. If Garber sucks dick, then so did Kirkland and Cody Lattimore, right? Yeah. And you can move on to your next lineup. But I think that's this week. It's going to change as we play, right? You might have, it might be more optimal to go 2-1, but go get your quarterback and a couple wide receivers to run with him, and I think you're fine.
This DC San Antonio game, do we want to do a run back? Like no matter what we think about DC this year, they're probably going to put up points. We just don't know how yet. We just really don't. So do we want to grab one of these pass catchers from DC? Do we want to get a running back? How would you approach this, Ellie? Would you want to grab a DC guy here as a run back, or is that too crazy? How crazy are we trying to get? 4 players from the same game out of 7?
Well, listen to me. I don't want to forget about Memphis. I don't know why, but you guys have talked me into liking Memphis a little bit more. Yeah. So I think you can throw a Memphis running back and defense in and kind of just go with the handcuff again. And I think maybe we do use that last spot and potentially run it back with DC. I'm not opposed to Cameron Harris for this lineup if we can afford him.
Can we? If we can't afford him. We got 7,700, but we can also afford Pledger, Hall, Burnett, Cameron Harris, Henney, Blake Jackson. I mean, there's just you could literally you could take this lineup and make 20 lineups out of it with just small little changes. I probably will do that. With small little changes. So I think what itches my brain a little bit here is this Cameron Harris with you got quarterback +2 with the run back. You've got Victor, Memphis running back with the defense going up against Houston, and then Sternberger here. Now, this is, if you're trying to solo win, a big contest, I don't feel like this is going to be super popular. This feels like there are popular players, but this roster construction, I don't know that this is going to be a super popular build. So I feel like this much from one game, if this San Antonio DC game happens to be a shootout, now you're basically completely fading St. Louis. which is a huge risk. But if they just have a below average week 1, it could pay off. I don't think I want to do too much of that. So maybe we can, instead of Cameron Harris, maybe we go with somebody from St. Louis, probably a Blake Jackson at this point, or a Shepard, any one of these guys. What else would you change from this lineup, Scott?
Well, I mean, look, Michigan is not bad defensively, in my opinion, and I don't see St. Louis coming out and dudding, but I think they're going to have a lot of the ownership, a bulk of the ownership. So in a GPP, fading St. Louis could just immediately put you up in the top 10% if that worked. Yeah. I don't think it's going to work. I like Shepard right there, and I like leaving 1,200 on the table. I like leaving a lot more on the table, to be honest with you. I'm not going to set any rules for it, but what I will say is, we saw, we're used to in NFL, NBA, not leaving that much money on the table. Even in NASCAR, we don't leave that much money on the table a lot of times. And this is the one sport where I think you almost have to force yourself to leave money on the table. So Shepard with 1,200 is nice, and even going below him would be nice. But yeah, I personally would not fade St. Louis in a lineup, at least get some piece of it. But, it's I don't know. I mean, because to me, I look, we're going the double tight end. I don't think a lot of people are going to do that. We're going Chase. I don't think a lot of people are going to do that. I think he's a value quarterback, of course. Victor and the Showboats, I think it's safe. I mean, we plugged him into both lines. I think we all feel safe about that. Yeah. And Kirkland, I think we got the stack there. We don't have a run back. Look, if Chase, Kirkland, and Latimer go off, DC's throwing the ball, right? Yeah. I mean, they're doing something, right? Unless they just went up so many points. So maybe someone from DC, maybe a Brandon Smith, and leaving some money on the table. Maybe, you know what? Maybe just putting all 4 wide receivers in a randomizer and picking just one randomly and plugging them in there and leaving the rest of the money on the table.
Yeah, just rotate it out.
Just rotate it out. Yeah, I mean,
get like 4 or 5 lineups out of this. The point here is there's just unlimited possibilities, because all of these, there's 10 guys right here that I'm looking at that I would be comfortable playing in this lineup, and it doesn't matter what the hell their salary is. And to me, I know that there's not a ton of contests out there. I was able to get, I think, 35 tickets into the big contest. I'll probably add a few more. They have a mini max. There's a couple 20 maxes, but they all really suck. But in my opinion, getting as many lineups week 1 as your bankroll will allow is super important, because and not going too heavy on any one guy. I think spreading yourself out. You can go heavy on teams, but spread yourself out within those teams. All right, guys, we're going to send it off here in a second. What did we learn, Ellie, Scott? That was a fun show. Appreciate you guys. This is going to be fun, man. I'm super excited. We don't know what the hell is going to happen. We could see some crazy shit. This is another rebirth of the spring league. I think that this league will last. I think they've done a pretty good job. At first, I was kind of bummed that they were merging, but then it made a lot more sense as we started to see more details come out. Unfortunately, they kind of made a bad decision by keeping the USFL kickoff right as the NFL adopts the XFL kickoff. And we saw Reed from Marcast talk to Daryl Johnston about that. And, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. We can get into a lot of rants there. But to me, this feels like keep your 8 teams, build up your fan bases for 2 years. Don't start adding teams next year. That's just my thought. It's like let this thing grow. Let people get used to these teams. Then you can start adding teams. Anyways, rant over. What did you guys learn? Scotty, what did you learn?
I mean, really, there's a lot of good players down there that are cheap, and don't be scared to click them. Like I said, you don't want to build a chalky build week 1, but you just said it a couple minutes ago. Don't hone in on one player and just go all in on one player. It's going to be weird. I think we're looking at the best year ever of spring football. I think the games are going to be competitive, which is going to be great for DFS. We don't have to worry about blowouts like we do in the NBA. So it's a situation where I think we're going to see good competitive football. We got better broadcasts, better PR this year. I think the fan base will expand. We have a chance to make these DK contests grow and actually get bigger. I think they played it safe. They got burned last year. We all know it. Overlay in every contest between XFL and USFL. So I think that, to me, get ready for some really good football and hopefully for all of us, some really good DFS.
I love it. Ellie, send us off with some wise words.
Yeah, just last thing, guys. We're doing our best to put together all the knowledge that we can find when it comes to UFL. So whether it's Tyson, me, Scott, Run the Sims, Cody Main, ETR, whoever it is, be patient with everybody. We're doing our best to figure out the best projections, and we have no idea who the fuck is starting, man. That shit could all change 10 minutes before lock. It could change after lock. Who knows? So just be patient, and let's just have fun and try and make some money, guys.
Scott, apparently we're going to need to find some insiders that are at these games. I remember last year, scanning through social media on Twitter and zooming in 1,000% to try to see if a certain player was on the field, and I couldn't make out the number. I was running it through AI, cleaning up the image. I just pray that we get some real reporting and real inactives, and we know who the hell is out there. Even with the NFL, sometimes we're like, who's actually active? So I really hope that we can get that this year, because that'll make things a lot more fun, and it'll grow the league. Like if you have action on these games, you're going to be watching them. You know what I mean? And I think as long as they keep an eye on that and keep us happy, these leagues are going to continue to grow. All right, guys, we appreciate you. Throw us a like on the way out. Let's get to 50 likes on this one. We appreciate it. Join that YouTube membership for that write-up. Make sure you're in the Discord. Subscribe to Run the Sims. Use the code EDGE to get 10% off. We'll see you guys later.